Okay, I'm here with Mike Piana. He is the VP of Sales and Marketing at J. O'Brien, as well as a partner. Mike, it is great to have you on the podcast today.
Hey, Luke, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hear that you just told me you're expecting a baby on Friday.
Yeah.
So that's a big change. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I'm excited at this point. I got over the whole nervousness of the the whole situation. I'm just kind of looking forward to a new adventure. Obviously, it's probably the most sleep I'll have in quite some time moving forward. But yeah, it's definitely exciting and right around the corner. So looking forward to
Yeah. Yeah, we are just sneaking this episode in right before that. So, no, that's really cool. We just had our third boy. He's 3 weeks old, and my wife has just been awesome. She's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So, yeah, enjoy the sleep while you can, man.
it. Thanks.
Yep. All right. So, before we get into it, I got some questions for you, but I
Sure.
want to play a quick game of overrated, underrated. And what I'll do is I'll share a word or a phrase with you, and you got to tell me if it's overrated or underrated. Sound
Okay.
good?
Let's give it a shot.
All right, here we go. March Madness.
Ooh. This year, I say underrated for me, just because I was kind of rooting for St. John's. Obviously, that Cinderella story. They got out earlier than I think everyone expected, so that kind of I tuned out a little bit from there. But obviously, super popular, so I'm gonna go underrated. But I think that's against probably the majority.
Yeah, I was following St. John's a little bit this year. I had them in the Final Four. So man, but I hadn't watched an entire basketball game in a long time, and I watched that Auburn and Florida game, and that Walter kid from Florida is a stud. So we'll see what happens in the finals.
Yep.
Okay. Shifting gears a little bit, cinnamon rolls.
Cinnamon rolls. Probably underrated. I love cinnamon rolls. I don't think they get the credit they deserve. I don't know. What about you?
I agree. I think they're underrated for sure. All right, LinkedIn.
Ooh. Depends on the day and what's out there, right? I feel like it's slowly becoming non-business related, but that's kind of like the way the world is kind of melding with kind of personal lives. I use it a lot. Obviously, we're a B2B sales company, so really focus on that channel. It's probably the number one channel. So I guess underrated is my guess there.
Yeah, I read a stat about it's like 1% of people on LinkedIn make up 95% of the content or something like that. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for people. So all right, I got two more. The Masters.
Masters. Underrated. I mean, I'm big into golf. I probably won't play a lot this year due to the circumstances, but I love golf, and I usually always tune into the Masters. I'm not a big fan of watching golf. I'd rather get out there and play. But the Masters, for some reason, every year I'm locked in. I don't know if it's just kind of like the start, and it makes you feel like you're ready for spring and ready to get out there. But usually I tune in every year, so underrated.
Yeah, I do too. Same. Something about that. Something about the Masters tournament. I don't know. That green jacket just makes me want to go out and play.
It is odd that they have like kind of their Super Bowl at the start of the year, right? You think like they would have that towards the end, more anticipation behind it. But I think it kind of gets the season going with a lot of excitement. So it makes sense.
Right. Are you rooting for anybody to win it?
No one really in particular. I'll watch the field and kind of, just root for everyone, just see how it goes. I like when it comes down to like the final day and they're within a few strokes and it's not a runaway victory. That's really what I hope for. I don't have I'd say a favorite golfer, but I'll definitely tune in.
Cool. Last one coming off the heels of IC West, trade shows, overrated, underrated.
I think for our business, underrated. I know, with things modernizing, a lot of meetings can be held remotely, but in-person meetings in general, I think are underrated. It's something that I'm big on. I'm kind of an old school mentality of doing business, want to get in front of people, build a relationship and make sure they know who we are. So I like it. I think it's an underrated activity, something that we definitely focus on usually year after year, and probably don't plan on changing that really anytime soon. So
Yeah. And it seems like, coming out of COVID, when everybody's cooped up in their house and trying to figure out how to get on a Zoom call, coming out of that and just getting like this last IC West, it was hopping. I mean, it was electric in that exhibit hall. And I think people are just, they crave that human connection, that face to face. So
yeah, I couldn't
I'm with
agree
you.
more. I think we were, kind of confined for so long without that. And again, I think the security industry in general kind of has that older school mentality where there's a trust thing, right? You want to know who you're dealing with, know who you're working with. So, I'm not surprised that it's come back for our industry, and I'm glad to see it actually.
So how did you get into the security industry? I asked this question a lot on this show, and no one ever says, "Oh yeah, ever since I was a 4-year-old, I dreamed of being in the security industry." So what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think short of like folks who like their parents are involved or they're taking over, a family business, you wouldn't really think to get into it. You're not really aware of kind of that sub industry that is so important and involved in almost every organization until you're really in it. So for me, I was looking for a job right out of college. I owned a small business. It was a repair shop. So I did like small appliance repair, vacuums, things like that while I was going to school. So I had kind of a technical nature and just a spirit for wanting to run my own business or get involved in business. And I had the opportunity to join Jay O'Brien as a technician. So I've seen kind of the industry change over that course of time. But yeah, I wasn't planning on it. I was actually recruited by a headhunter at the time. So I had my resume out there, and it just so happened to work out.
So did I hear that right? You started a vacuum repair company in college. Was that to help pay for college?
Yeah, I did that as kind of like a side hustle. So I was doing a lot at the time, and I'm always kind of doing a lot. That's kind of like my nature. I can't slow down. But at the time, I was definitely looking to help pay the bills a little bit. Wanted kind of the challenge of running my own gig, doing kind of every aspect of running a small business as a man of one was definitely a learning experience. But yeah, I was working at a country club at the time, pretty much 30 hours a week running the small appliance repair shop and then going to school. So it was a lot really to take on at one time, but kind of paved the way for it being related to Jay O'Brien. And funny enough, my partner Charmaine had a friend who consulted for the business who was actually a member at that country club. So when my resume came across their desk, they saw that and they saw a connection, and it just helped during the interview process. I wouldn't say it got me the job, but at the end of the day, there was familiarity there, and it was just happenstance. It was coincidental. So it kind of one of those things kind of meant to be.
That's that's really cool. I have a similar story. I started a startup in college, and I don't know if you found this, but I learned so much more actually building something in the real world than going to class and sitting there at a desk and trying to, consume information and then throw it back up on a test.
Without a doubt.
I'm like, man, once I took that knowledge and had to put it into the real world, man, I just learned so much. But through that, I met the founder of CloudCard. So
Oh,
he was
interesting.
consulting for the Center for Entrepreneurship, and that's how I met him. And they always say it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And I've definitely found that to be true.
Yeah, it plays a part. There's definitely a little bit of luck to it, but like you said, um, really you get more out of building something and putting in the work day to day, and it's really it's practical experience that you're not going to get inside of a classroom. And I'm a big proponent of like continuing education. I found my degree to be worth it. That's a debated topic, of course, in terms of who you ask and what they think of secondary education, but big proponent of that, but I think it just really gives you the foundation, and then you really don't cut your teeth until you're in it and you're able to apply knowledge for specific problems and use cases, coming up with solutions is where you really learn, I think,
Hmm.
how to kind of operate and get your bearings for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I've found, when I can get my hands on something, it makes such a difference for me. So tell me about, I mean, you guys are a small company. You're building your company. Tell me more about Jay O'Brien
Sure.
and what kind of sets y'all apart.
Yeah, so give you the quick history rundown. There's a lot to this, but business started in 1986. Charmaine and her father, John, hence Jay O'Brien, started a manufacturing company actually, and I'm proud to say that we still manufacture to this day. Very select products, of course, but we started out strictly manufacturing badge holders. So rooted in the identification business from the very start, built up the company together. They, built a very good business. And when I came in, we moved into more modern solutions. Back in the day, it was Polaroid film and laminated ID cards, and then it slowly transitioned into card printers that we know today. They were doing very well with that. But when I came on, we were strictly, I'd say, a product-based business where we're simply, identifying the needs of customers and providing a widget in, a good fashion just to make sure that they had what they need in time. And then when I came on, we really focused on solutions, and I think that's been my contribution to the business is just bringing forth solutions to customers. So outside of just hardware, but software and services, those are the most, growth driven segments of our business. So we're seeing a lot of success in doing that. And it's really allowed us to kind of spread our wings and diversify into other areas.
So tell me about the difference between, because you talked about having a product business and then transitioning to a solutions based business. Tell me about that mindset. Like how do you approach business from a solutions mindset? When you approach a customer, when you run just tell me more about that.
Well, that's a great question, actually. And I think the mentality around that is we have the history in supplying an item, being an approved vendor, working with some of the largest brands and organizations in the world. So we were blessed with that relationship just on a transactional level. I think it comes from a deep desire to say, hey, how can we do more? How can we provide more value to the customer? Identifying what they're doing with those products and saying what's around that, because it's not just the ID card, it's not just the printer. There's a whole badging process that goes on where there's opportunities to step in and offer like a software solution similar to yours, where it adds immense value to their day-to-day lives. It allows their operations to be more efficient. So I think it just comes from a desire to want to do more, want to get into more challenging sales situations. It definitely takes a mindset to where there's of course liability involved. You're doing more within their environment. You're responsible for more. There's expectations that are set by the end user. But at the end of the day, it's just how can we integrate with those customers and become an extension of them rather than just a supplier. And that's really what's driven kind of the goal to get into that model as our primary business driver.
How do you how do you balance um, having expertise in some being focused and being like, this is what we do, while at the same time trying to expand into those different solutions that a client might need? Like how do you view that and avoid becoming like just this generalist that doesn't do, does a lot but doesn't do anything well? Yeah, how do you
Right.
think about that?
Yeah, you can fall victim to that, I think, if you try to overexpand. And I think the critical way to avoid that and to be able to provide what I think is our secret sauce in putting the customer first and being hyper focused on their experience with us. The only way to do that is to have really good people. So thankfully, we have a great team where our day to day or our bread and butter businesses are handled operationally very well, and it's scalable. And I think the other side of it is technology. So we invest in probably higher than our revenue segment business system. So we have a very advanced ERP system that allows us to do much more with fewer heads. So it's just about being efficient, scaling the business systems to an appropriate level to do business with the organizations that we focus on. So it's just a matter of, I think, viewing and planning for growth as like our primary goal without sacrificing the service that the existing customers get.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. And I can definitely resonate with small but mighty team.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going to do a lot with a little. And I am constantly praising our team. I feel like we have the best team out there. One of the things, Mike, that I have really appreciated about y'all is your openness and enthusiasm around our technology, like a new technology. And I wish I could say that's the case with every partner that we approach with like a reselling relationship. But you guys especially have just been really enthusiastic about the software and this new technology. And so I'm just wondering where that comes from.
Yeah, I think it comes from a few places. Obviously, there's always a desire to offer additional products because that allows us for growth. But I wouldn't say that that's really the primary driving factor to why we want to emphasize and work with you guys. It comes down to a lot of different factors, mainly being kind of what we touched on before, trying to bring value to our customers. When I dig into a solution like yours, and it provides a way to be extremely efficient in the photo collection process. I view that as, okay, great, that's terrific. I'm not going to use it personally because we're a very small team, but I can put myself in the shoes of our customers who have thousands, tens of thousands individuals that interact in their system on a day-to-day basis. They can really get value out of making that process more efficient. So I guess that's why I'm so excited, is because we could bring a solution to the table that will make our clients extremely happy. And that's usually the way that they react, is they don't know potentially that there's a solution out there that could save them from the administrative labor of collecting photos. I know it sounds like a small task, but when you scale that up to 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 or more employees, there's someone usually behind a desk somewhere constantly emailing employees to collect photos, edit them, and save them. So if you start to take a look at it, I don't know why you wouldn't be enthusiastic about it. You can solve a problem for your customer, bring in additional revenue, and then be known for someone who brings new and fresh ideas to the table. So, there's just a lot of enthusiasm around that internally here, and we're very much happy with the results that we're seeing so far.
There was a client that we met with at a conference. This was probably a couple of years ago. And when we told them about what we could do, I'm not joking, on the verge of tears. and it shocked me. I was like, really? And he said, well, you don't understand. I have to sit here during orientations and approve every photo by hand via email. Like they were emailing photos in, and he had to approve and deny every single one. And this was a huge university. And when he found out that remote photo capture was a thing, it just made his whole day.
Yeah, those unsung heroes behind the desk that are in charge of badging are really the ones that we're trying to sell to or on behalf of, because once they hear about the solution, usually they're our biggest advocate. And then maybe those with the budget above don't really understand kind of the day-to-day operations and how much time is spent on it. So once we have that conversation, it's not a hard concept to get across. And then usually you have buy-in, and it's a matter of, okay, how would we deploy this now that we know it's available and can bring us this immense amount of value? How can we integrate this into our system? And that's kind of where, our technical staff come in, your professional service staff, who are absolutely excellent. We really guide that client from, okay, new product, how can we envision this placed within your environment? And, all of the most, I would say, probably 95% of the reactions right now have been extremely positive, and the few that maybe didn't get it just didn't maybe take the time to truly investigate what happens in the badging office, because they're just kind of removed from the burden of having to do it. So, you got to kind of work it from the bottom up and the top down at the same time, obtain budget, but also understand value of the solution. That's the way I look at it.
You're exactly right, and I loved the I think you said unsung hero. I've heard redheaded stepchild as well, because you're right, they're just forgotten. It's like, and yet there's so much data in that badging office that makes it instrumental
Mhm.
to the organization, whether it be a university or a corporation. And if we can show them how much inefficiency there is with manually processing each
Mhm.
photo by hand, um, and actually quantify that loss, like put a dollar amount to that loss. I mean, it's a no brainer. Like, oh my gosh, we can put this on autopilot and photos can magically get delivered wherever they need to go.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and I think going back to what you said earlier, Mike, it sounds like a big driver for you all is the customer experience. It's like, man, how can we delight our customers with solutions? And I think overall, that's a trend that I'm seeing in the security industry. We started out in higher education, and so I always thought, I didn't even realize we were in the security industry. I just thought we were a customer experience product. And then as we move into corporate and enterprise through partners, they view our product from a security standpoint. But I see that transition of, yes, it's a security product, but it's also an employee experience product. And
100%.
and
Yeah, the way I look at it is you're not really selling a piece of software, you're selling time back to the customer. And when you can position it that way and you can quantify the time that they're wasting currently and just like all of the inefficiencies around the photo collection process, not to mention the stress, because when someone has a large batch of cards to print and they are held up on that single piece of data, which is always the photo, before they implement something like this, they're dealing with large lines at an office where folks are waiting around to get the ID. So it just puts a ton amount of stress on that unsung hero who's sitting there at the desk trying to get these things done as soon as they can. They have unhappy customers waiting, for their ID, and a lot of pressure is put on them. And usually, we don't hear about it until the printers that we sell or the supplies that we offer them run out unexpectedly and they have this long line out the door. So, I guess selfishly, the solution also allows the customer to kind of be forward thinking in terms of the batches that they're getting and produce those at a time where, stress isn't at the max. It's, maybe a few weeks before those employees start. And if they run out of supplies, they're able to contact us in advance, so that they don't run out. But again, we're selling time, we're selling convenience, and with where the product is priced at, it's very reasonable, and it's really an easy sale at that point once you make that case.
yeah, absolutely. And that's what's been so great about working with y'all is you've just from the very beginning you've got it, like just the lights clicked on, and you really, I can tell you have a deep understanding of the problem, and that's the key. You have to understand the problem that the client's facing before, going back to solutions, before you can bring a solution to the table. That we learned that lesson pretty early on. We were all excited about our software. It can do this and this and this and that, and they're like, I don't care. You haven't understood my problem yet. And so,
100%.
man, you guys just do such a good job of taking the time to do the work to understand the client's problems and put yourself in their shoes. And that really, really shows. So other than that, are there any other, which is a huge deal, are there any other things that you feel like kind of set Jay O'Brien apart?
Um, I think we hammered customer experience, and like can't emphasize that more. It's cliche. It's in our tagline. Our whole thing is above, beyond, secure.
Yeah.
It's just all about going above and beyond for the customer. I just full heartedly believe in that. Those are the folks that win in the long term. But I think it's really just putting the client's needs above our own, in so many different ways. Like, of course, we're in business. We want to make money. Who doesn't? But at the end of the day, it's really, we want to build a long term relationship with customers where they view us as an extension of their company, not just a vendor. So it's
Mm-hmm.
this long game approach where you're not sacrificing the longer relationship with that customer for a short term gain. I try to put myself, and I tell my team to put yourself in the client's shoes and view what you're about to tell them, is it going to help me? Is it going to make my day easier? Is it going to allow me to do what I need to do in a better way? If not, why would they buy in? So, we need to be hyper focused, and that's what we do. And I think is really what sets us apart is we're always trying to put the client in the forefront. And I know a lot of folks will probably say they do that, but it's a lot different than executing on that effectively over a long period of time is very difficult. It's so easy to slip up or have turnover where it affects your business relationship. So, I view it as critical to our future, and you have to treat it that way, I think, to have long-term success for sure.
100%. And it's easy to put, a value like that on a coffee mug, right? And slap it on there or on the values wall, in the office. And you're exactly right. It is so much harder to put that into practice and say, no, we are going to be obsessed about the customer experience and how their view of the problem that they're experiencing. So no, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think it comes down to also like challenging your vendors. So like, when we qualified remote photo, when we take on a new solution, we don't just run with it. There's a process in which we're vetting that solution to make sure that we're going to protect our reputation. Because anything we put out there, and very much in reverse, anything that any partner you take on, you have to be worried about whether they're going to represent your brand properly. So when we take on a new solution, we're really rigorously checking it against our standards and our customer standards to make sure that it's going to really fill a need, and we're not viewed as bringing maybe we're solving one problem and creating three others. We really need to vet that solution to say, hey, this truly does bring value. It will fix X, Y, and Z, and we present it as such, and then it follows through both from our standpoint and then from the software provider standpoint. So, you guys passed all of our tests in terms of vetting the solution and making sure it really does what it says it's going to do. Because there's too often I see, in the software space where it claims to solve a problem, but it doesn't maybe solve that problem in the way the client needs it to be done. There's certain workflows or flexibility that an application needs to have for it to truly deliver what the customer expects. And if those things are too far apart and we're trying to, push them into a solution that doesn't fit within their day-to-day life, it's really creating more problems than it's solving. And that's how we really judge applications that we bring to the table. So, it's just kind of having that approach. Again, it comes down to being customer-centric and ensuring that you care about what you do.
And I think for us, focus is really important. Fortunately, we solve a very narrow problem. I remember when I first met the founder, he told me about what remote photo did. And I said, it's capturing photos.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult can it be? And here we are, 7-8 years later, still getting to the bottom of that problem. And there's no end in sight. I mean, there's still so much more that we want to do from a development standpoint, but we're laser focused on just solving this problem.
Yeah.
Like we are the best, and we're going to continue to be the best in capturing and delivering a quality ID photo without any stress. And without any, we want to get to the spot where there's no human intervention, right? Where the photo just magically shows up wherever it's supposed to go. It's great that you guys see the value there and sharing that vision. So tell me about transitioning to being a partner in the firm. Like that's really exciting. That's really exciting. How's that transition been like? What's changed for you?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully for me, day to day, not much has changed. Like I said, Charmaine and I have worked together for quite some time. I've had several different roles here. She's supported me almost to the level of family for so long, and allowed me to really grow into different roles within the business, from being a technician to being a territory sales rep to director of sales. Like I've held different roles within the company over time. So it's not that I didn't know what I was getting into when I became an equity partner. That was well established. And, thankfully Charmaine saw the value in bringing kind of the business to another generation. But she's very much still involved, and we have a great relationship. So It's been pretty much business as usual for me. I handle everything front end between our vendors and our customers, and then she's very much involved on everything behind the scenes, just making sure that the business runs on a day to day. So it's a really good fit for both of us, and it's just been an extremely rewarding, challenging experience. But at the end of the day, I mean, I consider myself blessed for the opportunity that's been in front of me, and I look forward to kind of taking the business to the next level and keeping the train moving.
And what does that next level look like for you? Like as you look at the business over the next 2, 5, 10 years, where do you want to take it?
Sure. So a couple different answers there. I think a lot of our direction is going to be driven by customer needs and where the market is. We talk a lot about mobile ID within our business. It's been talked about for many years. We're seeing a lot of emphasis behind that. So I think continuing what we're doing from a solution standpoint is a winning strategy. An appetite for cloud-based products is probably the highest I've ever seen. So focusing on cloud solutions that fit with our clients' requirements. And then also looking for other areas to diversify. So, on top of everything we do here for end users or end customers in our business, Jay O'Brien has taken on a niche distributor role for certain components that I view are going to be very in demand moving forward. So we're a distributor for a few identification readers, so document scanners such as the readers you see at the airport to read a passport or a DL, pretty much anything involving controlled substances or kiosk self-serve style environments that require age verification is something that we're getting heavily involved in and starting to distribute for, just because we see kind of where the world is going with digital ID. So building that into our current core business and obviously not ignoring what has gotten us to this stage is where I see us in the next 5 to 10 years for sure.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really cool vision. And I think you're exactly, if you can stay close to those customer problems and have a pulse on those, that's going to guide you. And one of the things you said that stood out to me is an emphasis and an appetite for cloud solutions, which traditionally the security industry, as I'm learning, like, I'm pretty new to the industry, is there's a big hardware focus with locks and doors and turnstiles and all that. And obviously resellers make a ton of sense because you have to physically install a good. And I've heard other concerns or hesitations from resellers about cloud services because they're like, how do we fit into this? They're going to bypass the channel. So I'm just curious, how do you view all of that?
Yeah,
I know
I mean, I
that
see.
might feel like a loaded question, but I'm curious your thoughts.
No, I think it's a good question. And it depends on the segment of the industry and the end user as to their appetite for cloud. But again, I've never seen the demand for cloud as high as it is now. So we're just kind of keeping our finger on the pulse of what the customer's looking for. And we do a lot in visitor management as well. I don't think we touched on that. So we sell visitor systems from a variety of providers. And most of our solutions offer either an on-prem version of the product or a cloud-based version of the product. And you probably 5 years ago, I'd say 90% of those requests were for an on-prem, server client style deployment. And now it's like, yeah, I want it in the cloud. And we're asking questions like why, and it comes down, I think, to something maybe we look at, from a workforce or labor standpoint. Folks are wanting to do more with less. We touched on it briefly in our conversation here, but the customer still has those same problems too. Even if it's a gigantic organization, usually the security segment of the business is a smaller team. They're viewed maybe as an expense in a lot of cases, so headcount is low. So when it comes to getting support for applications that they end up going with, I think the idea of cloud where a third party manages that database and is also, in a lot of cases, required to support the solution, it allows them to continue to operate and not have to worry about the infrastructure problems that bringing an on-prem solution bring to the table. So I think that that's really what's driving a majority of the demand for it, but it also comes down to liability around data and wanting to ensure that those servers are kept in a secure environment. And if there were, God forbid, for something to happen, there's another entity that's responsible for securing that, and it's not just internal to the business because those events can be so costly. So when you go to cloud, yeah, you're creating liability and sharing data, but you're also spreading out liability when it comes to housing that data. So I think if I'm going to wrap this up, another driving factor behind it is the convergence of the IT teams getting involved in what the security departments are doing, and they've been on a drive for cloud for a much longer time and see the value in it because it stresses their resources directly. So I think that has an influence as well. Covered a lot there, but that's my take on it.
There's a ton there, and I love what you said at the end there about IT and physical security and the relationship there. Do you see any tension there? Do you see more of a collaborative effort there? Like what's your pulse on that?
I think I see less tension than I did earlier in my career. I think
Okay.
that everyone at this point, most of my major customers have generally great relationships with the IT staff at their organizations because they're so involved in what they do on a day-to-day basis. So I think that those customers that do see it that way and have great relationships, those are the ones who really run really effective and efficient programs. So when there is that kind of divide, which used to be more prevalent, it just leads to inefficiencies. It leads to lack of communication, a lack of appetite to try things that are new and it would involve, cross departmental cooperation. So I'm seeing it less and less, and really it bringing a huge benefit to what the security staff are trying to do on a day to day basis because they have this support from, an entity that has a much larger budget to be able to get these projects done in a much quicker manner. So I view it as essential to our industry, and it's really a weakness if a corporation doesn't have that type of integration between the two departments. I think it's essential.
Yeah, I completely agree. So, Mike, I have one or two more questions for you. If you could, look back and give yourself some advice, either as a professional or a person, to 18-year-old Mike, what would you say?
Ooh. I mean, outside the obvious around lottery numbers and getting involved in the stock market earlier, um, hmm, I would say just kind of, again, don't lose sight of what's important around your role. Understanding what I learned over my time is that, your personal brand is more important than any business you'll work for. So just making sure that you're really trying authentically to generate relationships with whatever industry that you're in, focusing on that because that has paid huge dividends for me. Once I've learned the power of networking, the power of making just friends within the industry, it tends to lead to growth in business and just doing more collaboratively. So I just say like not losing focus on the power of just making connections. That's huge.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, like you said, showing up authentically and being a person of character, and when what I say is what I mean. That's one of the things that I've learned is like, man, trust is at the foundation of every relationship. I mean, any human relationship, any relationship in business. So showing up to those relationships with candor and honesty, and you're right. It'll pay dividends in the future.
Yeah, well said. Especially in the security industry. I mean, what
Yeah.
really kind of I guess drove that home for me is in the products that we sell and the business that we're in. We're selling keys to buildings. So, I don't know how trust gets any higher than that. I look at the organizations that we serve, and these are, locations that are critical infrastructure, large financial firms, insurance firms. Like these are, you would know exactly who we work with, and their environments are very important to keep secure. So if they trust us to provide keys to their building, we have an obligation to them to have immense amount of integrity, to continue and really value that trust that they put in us and take that very seriously. So I think you hit on something that's super important and even more important in the security industry. You look at the individuals who fill these roles. Usually in private security, it's ex-police, it's ex-military, it's ex-FBI or CIA or folks who work for the government. You're not really sliding a lot by them. So if you're not authentic and you're not just yourself and hopefully bringing your best to the table every day, they're going to pick up on that right away. They're going to sniff that out, and you're not going to have a fruitful relationship, especially if you violate that trust. It's super important to just maintain your reputation in this business and really any business, but especially in the security business, just due to the nature of who you're working with and what they do on a day to day.
100%. I remember I showing up to my first security conference, and it's like a bunch of guys who are jacked with tattoos and like, ex-military dudes. Like,
just like us, right?
These guys. yeah, just like us. Yeah, man. Okay. Last question. I always like to just ask if you have a movie recommendation, podcast recommendation, anything people should check out.
Just obviously, I think a lot of people are talking about White Lotus. That show I really liked. This season was very slow, but the ending, which I won't spoil for anybody, was definitely made up for how slow that show moved. And then outside of that, I'm a little late to the game, but just watched Hell or High Water. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I like
pretty much anything with kind of like a crime element or an investigative element with a twist. That movie was terrific. I just watched it probably 2 weekends ago, and I thought it was great. And then kind of got me on a pattern of watching kind of those style movies. So The Departed is probably one of the all-time greatest movies I've seen. So I rewatched that recently and love it every time.
Nice. I'll have to add those to the list. I keep a list, a running list, because my wife and I would get on Netflix, and there's all these. They just throw all these options at you, and we'd spend 45 minutes trying to pick a movie.
It's content overload. Yeah. I think between that and What to Have for Dinner are like the number two, like the two most argued subjects in my house. And I guess I'm blessed for that, but it's like kind of a running joke. We can't decide what to eat or what to watch together.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm already making so many decisions throughout my day. Like, I don't feel like making
you get there and you're just like, just go with The Office.
Pick something, but not that one. Don't do that one. Just pick one. Not that. All right, man. Well, Mike, thank you so much for your time. It has been awesome working with you, and best of luck with the new baby, and we'll be praying everything goes smoothly.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity to get together, and obviously looking forward to building upon this great relationship that we have with you guys. It's just been a great experience, and looking forward to build on that moving forward.